name is Jose. I am a PhD student of biological sciences at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. I am working at the Antonio Lascano's lab. We call him Dominus et Magister, that in Latin means my lord and master. And my advisor is Arturo Becerra. The three of us wanted to make a new kind of research in the lab because viruses were forgotten in the early stages of the history of life. So that is why I started this with them, this new kind of research that we call the viruses may be ancient but not primitive. So as we know that viruses are biological entities that infectious biological entities that need a ribosomal system of like a cell, so that they can replicate replicate their own viral proteins. So there is we have an estimation like 10 to 31 viral particles that are on the Earth, outnumbering all forms of life. How do they do that? Why are they so successful? That's because they have this kind of characteristics. As you can see, there are virologists divide viruses like RNA and DNA. They are based on the genome of viruses. For example, RNA viruses have these characteristics, like they have a high mutation rate, for example, 10 to minus 3 nucleotides per replication. But also they have a small genome size, like 35 nucleotides, 35,000 kilobase pairs. These RNA viruses have population, big populations, but also they have little lateral gene transfers. They have a gene duplication, but this is very little. RNA viruses overlaps their own genes because they want to, they have this necessity of economize the genome. So that is why they are very, very short. But they often have little recombination. Practically, the single-stranded DNA viruses behave like RNA viruses. So, and the double-stranded DNA viruses have the opposite characteristics of RNA viruses. So, but where do viruses fit in the tree of life? You know that comparative genomics has allowed to trace the history of all organisms like bacteria, eukarya, and archaea, so that we can infer a hypothetical entity that we call the last common ancestor, that is the ancestor of these three domains of life. And we do this phylogenies based on RNA genes and also RNA processing proteins. But what happened with viruses? So there are many hypotheses that place these viruses in the very early stages of life. Other hypotheses put them here, or here. So we have many. Well, not many hypotheses. We have just 3 hypotheses, and we can subdivide it. But that's another topic. So where do viruses come from? We have a first hypothesis that we call the virus first hypothesis, or the primordial hypothesis. You can see that since 1917, when the guy that discovered bacteriophage, tried to guess how viruses originated. So 100 years, since 100 years, we haven't found the way how viruses originate. So you can see another hypothesis, like the viruses are descendant of parasitic cells. Like in 1935, Green, and in 1938, Laidlaw said that maybe viruses have a cellular ancestor that was losing some genes, so they become in the parasitic entities that we know today. Another hypothesis about viruses descend from escaped genes. Burnett in 1944 said that maybe these viruses can form because of that, the genes were escaping from host genomes. And today, in 2006, there still is supported this hypothesis. So bacteriophages came from bacteria, eukaryotic viruses came from eukaryotes. So, for example, in the case of the primordial hypothesis, Kuning and collaborators say that maybe these viruses have formed an ancient virus world. I mean, before the origin of cells. So they place, for example, the RNA viruses that because they have a small genome, but also they are formed for they have an RNA into their genomes. They say that maybe they are they put them in the RNA protein world, and retroviruses, maybe they say that these are entities that have a transition between this RNA world to the DNA RNA protein world, and then later the DNA viruses are originated from this DNA RNA protein world. And they also say that maybe all viruses are the inventors of cells. So that is the primordial hypothesis. The other hypothesis, the reduction hypothesis, they say that there is ancestor cells, the last common ancestor, that were losing this gene. And there is an example. The megaviruses were discovered in 2001. These are the monsters of virology because they can have like 2,500 genes. Can you imagine that? So these megaviruses also have 8 important genes that are very conserved, and these genes intervene in the DNA processing, DNA synthesis, like for example RNA polymerase, DNA polymerase, tRNA synthetases, ribonucleotide ribonucleotide reductases, and that is why they say, okay, these proteins are also in cells, and they intervene in this DNA synthesis. So they may be these viruses come from in another domain, like this, that they call the fourth domain of life. So viruses were alive once, but so that is why they put it in the tree of life. So the other hypothesis is, as I told you, that these genes are escaping from their own host. So, but they came from this hypothesis say they come later after the origin of cells. So that is why we in the laboratory try to get all the information, all biological information for all databases of viruses, like for example GenBank, VirusZone, the International Committee on Taxonomy. We get all not only biological information, but also structural information, sequential information, ecological information. All of that we got all those databases. I want to say that in the lab we use bioinformatic tools. So if you go to our lab, it's just a computer lab. No, we don't do experiments. And in the very first stage of my project, we used all this biological information, and you can see in this graph the circles represent the size of viral genomes. But also DNA viruses are in blue and RNA viruses are in red, and you can see. Can I have the pointer? Oh, this? Sorry. Oops. Oh, thank you. Okay, we can see 4 circles. You can see the biggest genome, DNA genome, and the shortest genome, and also in RNA viruses, the biggest and the shortest. So well, you can see that the biggest one is very evident, no? That DNA viruses have the biggest genomes in all viruses. But for example, proteins, you can see that here the megaviruses. Megaviruses have a double-stranded DNA, genome. So you can see that all RNA viruses are very well distributed in the eukaryotic lineages. But you cannot see. You can see here just a few of them. And Archaea, that is one of the oldest lineage of the tree of life, they don't have RNA viruses up to date, but it can be a bias. But also, we can see that the RNA viruses infect phylogenetically distant hosts. For example, RNA viruses can infect at the same time plants and invertebrates, or invertebrates and vertebrates. This you cannot see this in the DNA virus viruses. So the hypothesis of an early origin of RNA viruses is not supported by the phylogenetic distribution, as I told you. For example, we have the trio domain of life, but you can see that the red ones, that is the RNA viruses, infect only the eukaryote lineage. But when we saw the phylogeny of bacteria, we could find that just 2 viral families like Cystoviridae and Eleviviridae, there's the only RNA viruses that infect prokaryotes. And when we saw the phylogeny of bacteria, we could see that they were proteobacteria. And proteobacteria like Shigella, Salmonella, Escherichia coli is very ecologically related to the eukaryotes. So maybe these 2 only viral families of prokaryotes are coming from the eukaryotic viruses, and we have evidence in their sequences. So and we haven't found RNA virus in Archaea. So you can see that RNA viruses are very related to the origin or to the divergence of the eukaryotic host. So maybe they have a recent origin, and you cannot put them in the RNA world. On the other hand, megaviruses that have double-stranded DNA genome, remember that they in the hypothesis of the reduction of genome, they form the 4th domain of life. But we can see that these megaviruses that infect invertebrates and vertebrates or protists like amoeba, for example, we made 2,000 phylogenies of of all the sequences that they have, all of the protein that they have, and I am showing just one, the ribonucleotide reductase, because this ribonucleotide reductase is in the core protein. I mean, it's the most conserved protein in all megaviruses. And you can see in this phylogeny, in blue we have eukaryote sequences, in red the virus ones, and in purple we got the bacteria ones, and in green the Archaea ones. So you can see clearly that, for example, in this clade, in this group, we got these megaviruses sequences of ribonucleotide reductase, and it is close to their own hosts. So when we look to the viral ribonucleotide reductase of other double-stranded DNA viruses like Baculoviridae, which infect vertebrates, they also are close to their hosts. Another example of double-stranded DNA viruses like phages, their ribonucleotide reductase is also close to the bacteria ones. And so maybe this ribonucleotide reductase is escaping from these eukaryotic hosts, so and prokaryotic hosts in the case of phages. So, but not we don't only found that, we identified that this ribonucleotide reductase is a type 1A. This, remember that ribonucleotide reductase intervenes in the reduction of ribonucleotides to form desoxyribonucleotides, I mean the DNA synthesis. But this ribonucleotide reductase type 1A do that, but in the presence of oxygen. So there are three types of ribonucleotide reductase. The first one needs this oxygen, and the other one they are anaerobic enzymes. So, but the ribonucleotide reductase that is in the megavirus genome, it needs this oxygen. So it means that maybe these ribonucleotide reductase were acquired multiple times, but before or during the great oxygenic event. So it happened 2.5 billion years ago. I mean, 1 billion years after approximately the origin of last common ancestor. So these megaviruses could not be in that early stage of life. I mean, in the origin of last common ancestor. So there are we have two conclusions about the RNA virus and DNA viruses. There are no known RNA viruses in archaea up to date. RNA viruses of bacteria are found in animal microbiota like Proteobacteria, I mean Shigella, Pseudomonas, Escherichia coli. So RNA viruses have a recent origin related to the origin of eukaryotes. So this means that simplicity, I mean RNA viruses, because they have a small genome, does not necessarily imply primitiveness. So this means that RNA viruses did not originate at the RNA world stage. But also, in the case of these examples of DNA viruses, based on the ribonucleotide reductase type 1A of phages, means that maybe this protein has a bacterial origin. But in the case of megaviruses, baculoviruses, and herpes viruses, I mean viruses that infect this eukaryotic host, this protein has maybe an eukaryotic origin. So this ribonucleotide reductase must have evolved once free oxygen had accumulated in this event 1 billion years after the last common ancestor. Therefore, megaviruses have a recent origin close to the eukaryotic divergence. So they cannot form this form domain of life. So that is the great conclusions that we have in this preliminary result is that viruses may be ancient but not primitive. So thank you very much to all of you, and sorry for my English. We have questions?
Thank you very much, Jose. We have time for one question.
So what do you think, what's your hypothesis for the RNA viruses being sort of associated with the advent of eukaryotic organisms? Do you think it has something to do with post-transcriptional modification of messenger RNA to make it more stable, which allowed it to maybe then go out into the environment and form viruses?
Yeah, well, actually we know the mechanism, an example of mechanisms of how these RNA viral genes escape from host. For example, the messenger RNA. You need to, the messenger RNA needs to go out from the nucleus, and because many of RNA viruses infect the eukaryotic nucleus. So maybe this could be an explanation of how they can escape from this host. Or also we try to in the next studies we need to analyze the mobilome. For example, the eukaryotic hosts have many retroelements, DNA transposons, and maybe they could. This mobilome can be a transition between these selfish genes to a virus stage. Yeah.
Okay. Let's thank Jose again.
Thank you.
Thank you.